Hello and welcome to tonight's episode where we're talking all about Napoleon, a movie starring Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby.
Yes, and tonight we're coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere near the North Pole. At least it certainly feels cold enough here to be that. So we're glad to be with you tonight. Also, I have a little bit of a cold. Natalie has a little bit of cold. So if my voice sounds a little more baritone, a little more manly,
If I sound a little more nasally,
you'll know why. So thanks for bearing with us tonight. So like Natalie said, we want to talk about the movie Napoleon, which is hot off the press. So what was your initial reaction to the movie?
well, there were some things that I really loved about it and some things that I really did not love about it.
Like, what was the first thing, like, when you got out of the theater? What was the first thing you thought, like?
Okay, so, let's start with the good. So Napoleon, of course, was a war general, and so they have a lot of they have a few battle scenes in it, and the battle scenes were very gory. Too gory for me. It's like, Dave, when can I open my eyes? But that's not the part that I loved about the battle scenes. I didn't love that part about them, but I just liked seeing the battle strategy and seeing them kind of reenact the battle strategy and how he won all that. And how that all worked. I thought that was really fascinating, and I really loved that part of the movie, that aspect. That was probably my favorite part.
So my favorite, or my initial, we'll say my initial reaction was Simpoleon, which is the title of the video here. Yeah, that word just for some reason came to my mind.
The whole.
Yes. Now, for those of you uninitiated, the word simp is kind of a derogatory term for men that idolize women in overly enthusiastic ways. So you might think of, a man that pays for OnlyFans and, sends her lavish gifts and birthday presents just so she'll even acknowledge him. So that's kind of a derogatory term for a man like that. A simp, somebody who's idolizing mediocre women, we'll say. So that was my initial reaction. What did I like about it? Okay,
yes.
Well, I really liked the costuming. The whole time I felt like I was actually there. And, before going into the movie, I kind of known that Napoleon's army, they had different divisions. And some of those divisions had the most intricate and elaborate uniforms that they used. So I really enjoyed whoever the costume designer was for this movie. I thought they did a great job. I also loved the cinematography. It felt like I was right there on the battlefield with Napoleon. So that strategy you mentioned, and that was a really enjoyable part of the movie for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was also pretty gory. The CGI was pretty good regarding that. It looked convincingly gory, so...
Too much for me, but maybe just right for you.
But what did you not like about this movie?
Okay, so what I absolutely hated about this movie was the characterizations of Napoleon and Josephine, which was really what the core of this movie was about. The battle stuff was just kind of ancillary.
That was kind of the background for the movie. And the movie really is this love story, but you really can't call it a love story.
No, Josephine and Napoleon were both played as very bland, depressive people who just occasionally had a few outbursts of anger, but were just very, very bland and depressive.
Yeah.
And
you actually know a little bit about the history. Well, you actually know a lot about history. So I remember coming out of the theater, I'm like, was any of that historically accurate? And Napoleon is a simp. He loves this woman, Josephine, and she can do no wrong. She sleeps around, and it's all in the newspapers. Everybody's making fun of Napoleon. And I was like, Was that like at all accurate, like historically?
Yeah, you're like, what is simp? And I'm like, okay, so yes and no. And I'm not this great historian, but I do think it is interesting. So historically, yes, Josephine did cheat on Napoleon, and probably not just once, many times. But Napoleon also cheated on Josephine many times, very often. And they did they mentioned it once in the movie. Yes, I slept, of course I had affairs, but they didn't mean anything. Like, they very much glazed over his infidelities.
It really wasn't about...
It was about her infidelities and him, just, simping for her.
Yeah, he was overly worshiping her,
and she wasn't even worship worthy. She was very bland and depressive in the movie.
Right, and we can talk a little bit about the characterization, but I really liked, I guess I really disliked that there was no character arc for Napoleon. So normally when you're watching a movie, you'll have some sort of reason to root for them. They have some obstacle to overcome, but it seemed like he was just brilliant at the beginning. And so as he got his promotions, he was going through the French government, rising to the top. And as he got there, you weren't ever really rooting for him. There was never really there was no character arc for you to follow. There's no reason to like this person.
Yeah, so I think this is a good time to go into the history of. Well, I mean, on that note, we can go more into the simp history stuff later.
Well,
but let's go on to the character arc first. Napoleon is often, viewed as kind of this cautionary tale of pride cometh before the fall, right? He's a very egotistical, strong personality, and he does have a lot of pride, and it's, I'm going to go and conquer the world, Napoleon complex, and then he suffers this massive defeat at Waterloo, and so that's kind of the traditional moral of Napoleon's story is this pride cometh before the fall. But in the movie where he's played as so like bland and depressive, you don't really see enough of his highs and enough of the high life and the good time that he experiences. You don't.
You kind of mentioned that in that timeline in France, that people were really loose with their sexual morality. You even mentioned that there was this like recent French politician who was unfaithful, caught cheating, and like the French people, they're like, so that's just part of our culture.
Okay. So now we're taking it back to the simp stuff. Okay, so Dave gets out of the theater and he's like, man, this Napoleon was such a simp. What a loser, And I'm like, well, that part. Like, the part about her having affairs and stuff, yes, that was historically accurate. But, like, meh. Like, do I consider him a simp for that in real life? Like, meh. When you look at the culture...
That's why I asked him, like, is that historically accurate? Because it just seemed like he was just, she could just do no wrong, and he had to worship her, and he'd just write her every day, and she just couldn't be bothered, and, like... I really wonder how historically accurate that was.
So when we look at the history of France and kind of this period, is especially in the upper circles and stuff, infidelities and these liaisons were very much accepted as a part of life. So marriages were political alliances, and they were partnerships to build wealth, and they weren't love matches. And so, it was very much accepted that you would, produce heirs and have your political ties with your spouse and a partnership that way, but that you could have lovers on the side. And and in other cultures at the time, it was maybe more accepted for just the man to have mistresses. But in France, they were kind of equal opportunity on this. Marie Antoinette had many male lovers. The French court before the Revolution, everyone was sleeping with everyone.
So when you told me about that historical context, it kind of made sense. But then there was no character arc in terms of, or there was nothing showing that kind of opulence of France and that loose morality, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, they were correct in that Napoleon was very jealous of her affairs. But they were. I would say that they were correct in that, but they didn't play. There was no real love between them in the movie. She obviously didn't care for him at all.
They didn't even make it look fun to be a French aristocrat during the time. There was maybe a few scenes with ballroom dancing and stuff, but just that opulent lifestyle really wasn't conveyed.
And that, I think they really went, that's what I'm talking about. They really went amiss with the characterizations. Is both Napoleon and Josephine were very strong personalities, and
larger than life.
Napoleon really, in turns could be pensive or preoccupied or angry, but he could also be very charismatic. And
I don't think you rise to power being not charismatic.
He could be in turns awkward or charismatic, but Josephine was also a very powerful personality. And she was very passionate. She sponsored the arts and gardens and brought back all this opulence and high living and stuff, and the gaiety after the reign of terror. And she was not this kind of depressive woman portrayed.
So,
she was a very passionate woman who who was very charming, and she would have been very in turns charming and such with Napoleon. But they would also have their bouts. They were feisty, but she was also very charming with him, and I think that there was some real love between them, some real passion between them that was not displayed.
I appreciate that historical context. So let's jump back into the movie side of it. So do you think that maybe they were miscast?
No, I think that this was a purposeful decision to portray them this way. Now, to what end? I don't know to what end, but I think that they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix, the Joker, he played a wonderful schizophrenic and depressive and, just this psychotic character really well. So, I think maybe Joaquin could have done it, but yeah, the script never lent itself to show the positive sides of their personality.
And if he played it more like he did the Emperor in Gladiator, I think that would have been, better if he was more bipolar rather than depressive. Like if he had more highs, I think that would have been better than just pure depressive mono. When he talks, he's very kind of monotone, except for the occasional little fit. But overall, he's very monotone. I think if he would have played it more bipolar rather than depressive, I think it would have lent itself better.
Yeah, and one other thing that I'll mention is the sex scenes in the movie were garish and off-putting.
Yes.
And that was on purpose. They wanted you to cringe hard. Now, the sex scenes actually weren't explicit, but that's what made it even worse. It was just like the implication and the lack of any sort of love or lust. It was just this like robotic. Not no. There was
Yeah, I
no
mean,
emotion in it whatsoever.
Again, it was a choice, and they obviously made this choice for a reason. But what? Why do you think that they chose to portray it this way?
I mean,
I don't know.
It could be, this is a historical figure from France. I hate to say it, but they could be making it woke, where they're trying to. I mean, there was
portray
nothing
him as kind of like rapey for this woman who didn't want him, or like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, maybe
Like-
that, but I guess that's not really how I characterize. It's kind of like taking all the folk heroes and like tearing down the statue, right? So if we think of Napoleon as this larger than life
Revolutionary.
revolutionary, this emperor, this war general that literally slaughtered millions of people. We have this larger than life kind of view of him, and then this paints him in a very simpy,
Pathetic.
detestable type of way.
Yeah.
And it could play into this larger idea where nowadays we pull down statues of people from the historical past because we're trying to get rid of the olds, the old tradition, the old ways, the old status quo, and new. So it could be part of that woke, but there was nothing explicitly woke. I mean, I was curious about, there were quite a few black people in this movie. I was like thinking to myself, were there that many black people in the French Revolution? I don't know.
I don't know how many were in mainland France. I mean, they, had like Haiti and stuff, so.
So maybe. I really don't know. So I was curious about that.
There might have been a couple, but
they were
probably,
almost like in every scene, and I thought.
There
I'm like,
probably
is
would
that
be someone in every scene.
I'm like, was there slavery there? Like, I didn't really understand the historical context, so I don't know if that was the decision to. I really don't know why they would have made this movie, and then instead of portraying Napoleon as someone who's a character arc, as a fall from grace cautionary tale, or maybe even someone you root for and you're hoping he overcomes the trials he has to rise to the top. Something more engaging, I think, would have been a better movie. So, overall, do you recommend this movie?
I don't know. If you like battle history, then yes. If you're looking for the events like technically were true that happened, but just how they played them. Like if you're looking for like a love story, or like to know what Napoleon and Josephine were really like I don't know. I probably wouldn't recommend it. Just if you're a battle hound, yeah.
Yeah, I would say no. This is a pass for me. I don't think I'll ever watch it again because, again, the characters, there's no one to root for. It's just like this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and that's not really a compelling story. I would have rather them embellish the truth a little bit and make him a more interesting character overall.
Right.
That would have been my preference.
Right. I mean, I think if they were being historically accurate, they would have been more interesting characters.
Yeah, and I just don't know. I don't know if Joaquin Phoenix was the right casting choice for this.
Yeah, well, like I said,
he just didn't have the charisma. I think that Napoleon probably did.
Right. I mean, and I think that was an intentional decision, and I think inexplicably, I don't know why they chose to do it this way. I think that there's an agenda behind it. I don't know what the agenda is.
Yeah, it's hard to, like, it wasn't explicitly woke like a lot of movies are, so I just don't really get, it's
what
like
their thought process
reverse
was.
Whitewashing or something like that. I don't know. So anyways, that's all we have for you tonight.
All right, well,
thank
have a
you
good
for
evening.
joining our show.
Thank you.
Go ahead and like and subscribe to us on all the platforms. And until next time, you heard it here.
All right.